In today's video, we're going to be going over a relatively quiet, relatively warm upcoming 10 days. I do realize that yesterday's video was very pessimistic, to say the least. A lot of you were feeling very discouraged, as was I, about the upcoming 10 to 15 day time period being relatively warm. And it does give some concern to cold and snow lovers, of course, that things may continue to look that way, as we've seen that happen in years past. Things look good for a good winter, but the warmth just never really lets up. Isn't it funny how the warmth seems to do that oftentimes, but the cold never really seems to be able to hold on quite as long? I don't know. For cold and snow lovers, it's a pretty brutal fact, but that is how it is most times. Now, in today's video, I would like to give you guys a little bit of optimism. Of course, I don't know what's going to happen in late December. I don't know what's going to happen in January and February. All I can tell you is the next 10 to 15 days. So this isn't to say that January and February are without a doubt going to be warmer and snowless. Things can turn around in a hurry. As we've seen, I mean, we were in a very active pattern, and now it's like the light switch has been turned off. I mean, it can get turned on just as quickly. There is an opportunity, a time frame that I'm watching, and it's particularly between the 19th and the 20th time frame. So it's about 10 days from now. Keep that in mind, because, you know, anything beyond 7 days should be taken with a grain of salt. So we're talking about possibilities, not probabilities, is what I would say at this point. And on the channel, I like to go over all possibilities. So we talk about all different types of scenarios that could potentially happen, given what we have here available to us. And today we're going to be talking about a brief time period of cold that lines up with a brief storm that moves just offshore. And really, there's some opportunity for connection there. And if things do connect, there could be our next eastern snowfall opportunity. Now, you're probably wondering, I know this is a long kind of introduction to this video, but bear with me. I want to give a lot of context here, because things can get taken the wrong way very easily. But the next 10 days are going to be warm. Even the next 15 days likely are going to be warmer for most of the United States, but especially the east. And it's going to be very quiet compared to normal. It's going to be much drier than what's typical. So those two things are likely. That's a probability, not a possibility. So there's the opposite. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be cold days. There's going to be a couple of days that look a little bit cooler. You know, if 2 out of 10 days are colder, it's a warmer time period, but there's still the 2 cold days. And as we know, all that needs to happen for snow is 1 cold day. You don't need 5 cold days in a row for snow to occur. You just need it to be cold while the snow is falling. And we're talking about a time period that's about 24 hours of cold combined with a storm system moving up the east coast, and there is an opportunity for snowfall despite the drier and warmer 10-day period upcoming. I hope that makes sense. It's still going to be warmer, it's still going to be drier, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be cold and snowy times within there. Well, now let's get into the video. That was a long time, but let's get into it. Now, by Tuesday afternoon, this is going to be tomorrow, it's looking a little bit cooler, as we did just have a cold front come through. So this is actually going to be one of the colder time periods of the next 10 days is actually currently. And really the dryness is going to be the biggest prohibitor of snowfall. It's not going to be the temperatures. It's really going to be dry. That's the biggest problem here. I mean, even as we move through Thursday, you can see not much happening around the United States. We have a couple of showers up here in the Northwest. A smaller, more localized storm system over the 4 corner states and plains, but that is really it at this point. Also, mostly warmer temperatures in the east. The southeast is quite warm. The upper Midwest and Great Lakes is quite warm, and really the only area seeing some cold is going to be the northeast and mid-Atlantic here, where there's a little bit of a backdoor cold front working its way in. But even that, by the time we're reaching Friday the 15th, is said and done. Now at this point, the jet stream is doing this, so we can see no dips across the United States. It's mostly warmth in the west, warmth in the central, and warmth in the east here. So this is that coast-to-coast warmth we were talking about yesterday that we see upcoming. Let's get into Saturday, and we do get a little tiny dip, okay? But you can tell it's not substantial cold, and my key piece of evidence of this is that there's rainfall occurring within this area. So obviously this means that there's above freezing temperatures in this area, which for the Great Lakes and upper Midwest in mid-December, that's going to be on the warmer side of things. Let's keep going. Let's work our way towards Sunday. And this is when we start to get some cold lining up finally. This is our European model, keep this in mind. And it is pretty far out. We're beyond 5 days here, probably approaching about 7 days. Keep that in mind. But your jet stream sits at about this, we do have a lot of charged cold air that is making its way southward, and this will intrude on the eastern states. But again, this is about 7 days out, and this is the first cool down we're having here. So a warmer period ahead still. We do have a low pressure system developing over Florida, and this looks to move up the east. So the cold is going to be moving in. The storm is going to be moving up the coast. There is some opportunity for something to combine here. Again, this is kind of a true testament to how quiet the upcoming pattern is, because usually this would be a 1-minute segment of our 10-minute video here, but we're focusing all 10 minutes on this today because really there is nothing else to discuss today. I wish there was, but there really isn't. So this is what we're working with. 981 off of the southeast coast. It is a relatively strong storm, but it is relatively far offshore. Keep in mind that if this was more over South Carolina and Georgia coast here, this would be much more favorable to move directly up the coast and bring snowfall. This one is very far offshore, and by Monday afternoon here on the 18th, we can see we have some pretty favorable characteristics, at least for this 24-hour period, as I mentioned before. Warmer air in the west, indicative of a positive PNA. So that warmth is going to help catapult all of this cold into the east, and we sure enough see that happening here. And by the time we're reaching kind of overnight Monday into Tuesday, so I guess this is more of a 18th into 19th threat. I said 19th to 20th earlier, but it looks more like an 18th to 19th. But look at how far offshore this is, 981. It's way too far. But if we saw this head in a little bit earlier and it was more located a few hundred miles further west, we would have enough cold here along the coast to really connect for something. And my evidence of it being cold enough is we see snow over some of our Appalachian mountains here occurring in the form of snow showers, also Ohio. And then for Maine, there's actually a secondary low up here bringing some snowfall. So it is certainly cold enough for snowfall. That low is just too far offshore. So we're not really seeing this connect yet, but I am seeing the ingredients here. And there's been a couple of times actually this year in particular where I've pointed out signals that looked about like this one and just kind of told you guys about the possibility for it to trend a little bit further westward. And we usually this year, for some reason, have seen that happen. West trends are a real thing on these models, and oftentimes they start out further east than they'll end up. But sometimes they're completely spot on. And sometimes at 192 hours out, the storm won't even be there. So there's a lot of variables at play here. But I just want you guys to be aware of about a 30 to 60% chance storm that could happen, and it could move further westward. Keep in mind, again, those probabilities are very low, and it is very far out. So there's very, very decent odds of this storm not happening at all. Now, we're going to watch this over the coming model runs. I'll be watching this particular signal over the coming days and referencing this video, letting you guys know how this thing progresses. There's, again, a very good chance that this does not trend westward, and this does not result in any snowfall whatsoever, or even rainfall for the coast if it's this far offshore. But there is that chance that this does trend further westward. There's enough cold air there that this does result in a surprise snowstorm. I wouldn't even call it a surprise because there's so much time until then, but more of a surprising snowstorm considering the whole long-range pattern that we see happening. This would be very out of nowhere because, again, about 2 out of 10 days are below normal here. The other 8 are above normal. But, again, if things line up perfectly, then it doesn't take 5 days in a row of cold. It just takes 1. So that is the type of scenario we're working with here. That storm does move, again, further offshore. It does move closer to the coast of Maine, and we do see some snowfall occur there. Also, things get colder for the East Coast afterwards, so this is just looking overall favorable temperature-wise for snowfall. But look at how that trough lifts off, and we're right back to this flat jet stream. Again, that is just a blink in this whole long-range pattern, and we don't really see much happen in the way of snowfall during this entire 10-day period, or really deep cold outside of that one 24 to 36 hour event that occurs there around the 18th through the 20th. That's what we'll call it. The 18th through the 20th, there does appear to be some East Coast cold around, Arctic cold, really, and some potential for snowfall as there is some coastal storms around. That's the potential we're working with. Again, I wanted to give a lot of disclaimers in this video because I didn't want anybody to get the wrong idea and think that I'm calling for a snowstorm to hit the East Coast. It's more of just making you guys aware of some opportunity in there despite the very pessimistic outlook I have for the next 10 to 15 days. There's that one glimmer of hope right in the middle for about a 24 to 36 hour window. There looks to be one storm signal that looks semi-promising to potentially trend in the right direction. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. I know it's a pretty bare bones one, but can you really blame me? There's not much to work with here over the next 10 days. I hope you guys understand. Hopefully things get a little bit more interesting over the coming weeks, and we'll have much more exciting things to talk about. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Be sure to subscribe as we do upload every single day. And of course, like I said, I will keep you guys up to date with this particular storm signal. Also, be sure to hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.